The sun was a burning white eye in the sky. The wasteland stretched forever. Cracked and dry, no trees, no rivers, no birds, only heat, dust, and silence. Even the wind was gone here. A lone man walked across the sand, his steps slow but steady. He wore a long coat, torn at the edges, and heavy boots covered in dust. A scarf and goggles hid his face from the cruel light. On his belt hung an old metal canteen, clicking softly with every step. He had been walking for hours, maybe days. But his pace never changed. Ahead, something broke the flat emptiness. A shape, small and still, lying in the dirt. The man's eyes narrowed behind the goggles. He walked closer, boots sinking in the soft sand. It was a woman. Her lips were cracked and white. Her skin burned red by the sun. Her clothes were ragged, and her hands clutched the empty air as if trying to grab rain that wasn't there. When she saw him, her eyes flickered with a weak light. She tried to speak, but only a dry sound came out. Finally, her voice broke into a whisper. "Water." The man stopped a few steps away, looking down at her. The desert was quiet around them. He didn't move for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached for his canteen. Her eyes locked onto it. Hunger and hope burning together, she licked her lips, waiting for the sound of the cap turning. But instead of opening it, he reached into his coat when his hand came out. It wasn't holding water. It was holding something strange, a crystal, smooth and glowing faintly with a pale blue light. It was about the size of a fist, and even under the sun's heat, it looked cold. The glow seemed to breathe, as if the crystal was alive. "This will help you more than water," the man said, his voice calm and deep. She stared at it, her mind slow from thirst and heat. I don't understand," she whispered. "I just need water." The man shook his head. "You need more than that," he replied. He stepped forward and placed the crystal in her hands. It was cool to the touch, almost soft in a strange way. The moment her skin touched it, the light grew stronger. She felt something rush into her body, a cold wave running through her veins. Her dry throat no longer hurt, her mind cleared. The crushing heat seemed to lift off her like a heavy blanket. She gasped. "What is this?" The man's head turned toward the horizon. He scanned the distance before answering. "It will keep you alive," he said slowly. "But there's a price." Before she could ask, the ground gave a low, deep rumble. The sand under them trembled. Far away, dark shapes began to rise from the earth. At first they looked like rocks, but then they moved, twisting and bending in ways that no human body should. The man's voice became sharp. "They can smell it now. We need to move." The woman struggled to stand, her legs shaking. The man grabbed her arm and pulled her up. The crystal pulsed in her hand like a heartbeat. In the distance, the shapes were growing taller, moving closer. "What are they?" she asked, fear in her voice. The man's grip tightened on her arm. "They're what's left of the ones who drank too much," he said. "Now run." They started moving, their feet kicking up clouds of dust. Behind them, the dark shapes began to run too, their limbs too long, their movements too fast. From across the empty land came a sound, not like a scream, not like a growl, something in between. It made her heart pound harder. She looked over her shoulder. The shapes were closer now. She could see their eyes, glowing like hot metal, locked on the crystal in her hands. "Why are they after us?" she shouted. "They're not after us," the man said without looking back. "They're after what you're holding." The ground shook again. A cloud of dust rose behind the creatures. The woman's legs burned from running, but the crystal felt lighter now, almost pulling her forward. Her mind kept returning to the same thought. This wasn't just water. This was something else, something alive, and whatever it was, it had called those things out of the earth. The man led her toward a broken ridge of black rock. "If we reach that, we can lose them," he said. But the howl came again, louder. This time, she could feel it inside her bones. As they reached the first rocks, the man stopped. He turned to face the open desert. "Keep moving," he told her. She froze. "What about you?" He pulled a strange weapon from under his coat. It looked half like a rifle, half like something made from old machine parts. "Someone has to slow them down," he said. The creatures were close enough now that she could see their twisted mouths opening and closing. Their skin looked dry like cracked clay, but their movements were fast, too fast. The man raised his weapon. The crystal pulsed harder in her hands, almost as if it was afraid. She didn't understand what it was or why it had saved her, but she understood one thing. Whatever those creatures were, they had been human once, and if she wasn't careful, she could become one of them. The first shot echoed through the wasteland. The howl turned into a scream, and the chase had truly begun. The ridge of black rock cut through the wasteland like the spine of some ancient beast. The woman climbed over it, her breath fast, her heart pounding. The crystal was still in her hands, glowing brighter now, its cold light spreading across her skin. Every time her fingers shifted, she felt a strange pulse, like it was matching her heartbeat. Behind her, she heard the sharp crack of the man's weapon. The sound echoed in the open desert, followed by the unearthly screeches of the creatures. She didn't dare look back. When she reached the other side of the ridge, the land dipped into a narrow canyon. The walls rose high and jagged, giving her shade for the first time in hours. She pressed against the stone, trying to catch her breath. That was when she noticed something. Her body felt different. The pain in her legs from running was gone. Her breathing was easier, almost too easy. She could hear things, the wind brushing against the canyon walls, the distant shifting of sand. Even her sense of smell was sharper. She could smell the man's gunpowder. And something else, something like old blood and dust, far away but moving closer. She looked down at the crystal. The glow had changed. It was no longer soft blue. It was brighter, sharper, with faint red veins running through it. For a moment, she thought she could hear it whisper, not in words, but in a feeling. It wanted something. It was hungry. The sound of boots on rock made her turn. The man was there, his scarf pulled down so she could see his face for the first time. His skin was tanned and lined, his eyes sharp and cold like polished steel. There was a thin cut on his cheek, but he didn't seem to notice it. "Are they gone?" she asked. "For now," he said, climbing down into the canyon. "But they won't stop." She held up the crystal. "What is this thing? Why does it feel like it's alive?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out another object. A crystal, smaller than hers, but dark, its light completely gone. He held it in his palm like a dead insect. "This is what happens when it finishes feeding," he said quietly. Her stomach tightened. "Feeding? On what?" He looked at her. "You." The canyon suddenly felt colder. She gripped the crystal tighter. "But it saved me." "It saves you," he said, cutting her off, "because it needs you alive long enough to take what it wants." Before she could respond, a shadow moved above them. She looked up and saw a figure standing at the canyon's edge. It wasn't one of the creatures. It was human. Tall, wrapped in layers of cloth, holding a long spear tipped with metal scraps. More figures appeared behind him, their faces hidden, their weapons crude but dangerous. The leader pointed at her and shouted something she didn't understand. The man swore under his breath. "They smelled it too," he said. "They're scavengers. They'll kill us for that crystal." The group started climbing down the canyon walls, their movements quick and practiced. The man pulled his weapon, but there were too many. He glanced at her. "Listen, if they get it, the whole desert will come for them, not just those things. Then what do we do?" She asked. "You're going to run," he said, "and I'll make sure they follow me instead." "No," she said sharply. For some reason, the thought of leaving him there didn't sit right. Something deep inside, maybe the crystal, told her that if he died, she would too. The scavengers dropped into the canyon floor. Circling them, the man fired the first shot, and the canyon echoed like thunder. One scavenger fell, but the others rushed forward. Their eyes locked on the glowing crystal in her hands. Then, without thinking, she raised it. The glow flared, and a wave of cold air exploded outwards. The nearest scavengers froze mid-step, their bodies stiff, their weapons falling from their hands. Their skin turned pale, almost translucent, and their eyes went blank. They collapsed to the ground, unmoving. The man stared at her. "What did you just do?" She didn't know. She only knew that the crystal felt warmer now, and the red veins in its light were spreading. The surviving scavengers backed away, fear in their movements. They shouted to each other and scrambled up the canyon walls, vanishing. Into the heat-shimmering horizon, silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was heavier, as if the canyon itself was holding its breath. The man stepped closer, his eyes locked on the crystal. "You used it," he said. "You shouldn't have done that." "I didn't know I could," she said, her voice shaking. "You can now," he replied. "And that means they'll all be coming for you. Not just the creatures, not just scavengers." She swallowed hard. "Who else?" His answer came after a long pause. The Scorcher. The name meant nothing to her. But the way he said it, like a wound that never healed, told her she didn't want to find out. The crystal pulsed in her hand again, and for a brief second, she felt something impossible. A flash in her mind, a vision of a massive city, shining in the middle of the desert, with rivers of water flowing through its streets. Then it was gone. She looked at the man. "What did I just see?" He tightened the strap of his weapon. "That's the bait," he said grimly. "That's how it starts." Far away, on the wind, came the first deep howl of the creatures again, closer this time. The hunger was calling them back. The wasteland. Night was colder than ice. The woman and the man sat near a small, hidden fire inside a hollow of rock. The flames were low, almost invisible, fed by scraps of dry grass. They didn't dare make it brighter. Too much light would draw attention. The man was cleaning his weapon, his hand steady. The woman sat across from him, the crystal resting on her lap, wrapped in cloth so its glow wouldn't escape. But even covered, she could feel it pulsing. Like a slow drumbeat against her skin, she broke the silence. "You said the Scorcher will come for me." The man didn't look up. "He's already looking." Her fingers tightened on the cloth. "Who is he?" The man stopped, his eyes distant. "They call him the Scorcher because he burns everything he cannot control." She waited for him to continue. "When the world started dying, people fought over water," he said. "But the Scorcher, he fought for the crystals." Her eyes narrowed. "So he knows what they do." "He knows enough," the man said. "He uses them, feeds them with prisoners, drains the life from anyone he captures." His voice dropped lower. "I used to work for him." She stared at him, shocked. "You, not by choice," he cut in. "I escaped when I learned the truth." But he never forgets a face. Somewhere far in the night, a thin, rising whistle echoed through the desert air. The man froze. The woman frowned. "What is that?" He answered without moving. "That's his mark." The sound faded, replaced by silence. But it was not the same silence as before. It was a waiting silence, the kind that meant something was already moving toward them. The man stood quickly, stamping out the fire. "Pack up," he said. "They found us." By dawn, they were far from the hollow, moving through a stretch of land filled with the broken remains of old towers and roads. The air here smelled faintly of rust and ash. The woman's legs ached, but she didn't complain. She could feel the tension in the man's movements. He was listening for something she couldn't hear. Then, without warning, he pulled her down behind a chunk of broken concrete. "Stay low," he whispered. She peeked over the edge and saw them. 3 riders on strange, 4-legged beasts that looked like a cross between a horse and a lizard. The riders were covered in dark armor made of scavenged metal, long rifles. Across their backs at their head was a tall figure in black. The woman didn't need to be told. This was the Scorcher. He rode slowly, scanning the ruins with calm, deliberate movements. His face was hidden behind a mask shaped like a skull, the metal scorched black in his hands. He held a staff tipped with a shard of glowing red crystal. Even at a distance, She could feel heat coming from him. The air shimmered around his body. Like the space above a fire, the man whispered, "Don't move. Don't breathe." The scorcher stopped his mount. Turning his head slowly toward their hiding spot, the woman's heart stopped. It felt like he could see her through the concrete. Then he lifted his staff and pressed it to the ground. A ripple of heat spread out in all directions, passing through the ruins like a wave in water. When it reached her, she felt the crystal in her lap twitch, almost like it was answering. The scorcher tilted his head slightly, then smiled. She couldn't see it under the mask, but she felt it. He turned his mount and rode on. His riders following. She exhaled slowly. "He knew," she whispered. The man nodded grimly. "He always knows." By nightfall, they found shelter in the rusted remains of an old transport station. The roof was half gone, but the walls were still standing. They sat in the shadows, too tired to speak. The woman unwrapped the crystal. It glowed faintly, but there was something different about it now. The red veins inside were thicker, brighter. She thought of the scorcher's staff. It had the same kind of glow. The man noticed her staring. "He has one too," he said. "Bigger than yours, older, and it's hungrier." She shivered. "What does he want from me?" The man's answer was simple. "He doesn't want you," he said. "He wants what you're holding. And if he gets it, no one will survive this desert." Before she could respond, the night air carried a sound, the same thin, rising whistle as before. But this time, it was closer. The man's eyes went hard. "He's done looking," he said, standing. "Now he's hunting." Asterisk. The wind changed. It carried the smell of dust rust. And something else, something faintly sweet, like flowers left to rot. The man walked ahead in silence, his eyes on the horizon. The woman followed, the crystal wrapped in cloth against her chest. Every step brought them closer to a jagged line in the distance. It wasn't a mountain, it was a wall, a broken wall made of something white and pale. At first she thought it was stone, but as they drew closer, she saw the truth. They were bones, huge, curved bones, taller than houses. They rose in twisted shapes, forming arches and towers. Some were cracked and hollow, others carved with strange symbols that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The woman stopped. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice low. The man didn't turn. "They call it the City of Bones," he said. "No one builds with bones like these anymore. No one could." As they passed under one of the massive arches, she felt the crystal in her hands grow colder. Its glow seeped through the cloth. The red veins inside it pulsed faster, almost in rhythm with something deep underground. The ground here was littered with skulls. Not human. These were longer, stretched, with too many teeth. Some still wore the rusted remains of metal masks. The man's voice was flat. "Long before us, something else lived here," he said. "They had the crystals first." They moved deeper into the ruins. The air grew heavy. The silence here was different, thick, like it was listening. Then she heard it, a faint hum, coming from ahead, not mechanical, not natural. It was like the sound the crystal made when she pressed it to her ear, only louder. They turned a corner and saw it. A massive machine stood in the center of a wide plaza. It was made of dark metal, smooth and seamless. Its shape was like a huge sphere, half buried in the ground. Cables, or roots, stretched from it into the bones of the city. The hum was coming from inside it, around the base of the sphere. Lay piles of skeletons. Some were human, their hands frozen in claw shapes, their skulls open at the mouth as if screaming. Others were alien, their strange bones tangled in the remains of armor. The woman's skin crawled. What happened to them? The man looked at the machine, his jaw tight. "They drank too deep." She stared at him. "You mean, from crystals?" He nodded. "That machine feeds them, keeps them alive, but it takes something back. When there's nothing left to take, it leaves this," he said, pointing to the bones. Her eyes went back to the machine. The hum was getting stronger, and the crystal in her arms was answering it. Its glow grew brighter. the red veins twisting like living things. Then the ground trembled. From the shadows between the bone towers, something moved. At first, it looked like mist, but then it took shape. A figure made of thin, shifting smoke, with two bright points. Where its eyes should be, it stepped closer. The woman's breath caught in her throat. The thing spoke, but its voice was not sound. It was inside her head. "You carry the seed," it said. "Return it to the heart." She stumbled back. The man stepped in front of her, raising his weapon. "Stay away," he growled. The smoke figure tilted its head. "You cannot keep it. It will drink you. It will drink your world." The hum from the machine deepened. The crystal's light flared so bright she had to shield her eyes. For a moment, she thought she saw something inside the machine. A massive shape, shifting in liquid light. It turned toward her, and she felt an overwhelming thirst. Not hers. Something else wanted her. The man grabbed her arm. "We're leaving now." But as they turned, a sound tore through the air. A long, sharp whistle. The scorcher's mark. The man cursed. "He followed us here." From the far side of the plaza, black armored riders emerged between the bone towers. The scorcher was at the front, his staff glowing with red fire. The smoke figure vanished. The machine's hum became a roar. The crystal in her hands was burning cold. The man looked at her, his voice urgent. "Run to the west gate. Don't look back." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll slow him down." But before she could argue, the scorcher raised his staff, and the city of bones came alive. The massive arches shuddered, bones cracking and shifting from the ground. Pale shapes began to rise, skeletal. Creatures with empty eye sockets glowing faintly blue. They turned toward her and started to run. The west gate of the city of bones was nothing more than two massive ribs leaning together. Beyond it stretched open desert under a sky stained orange by dust. The woman ran, the crystal clutched tight against her chest. Every few steps she looked back, but the man was gone, swallowed by the bone towers. Her legs burned, her throat was dry again. The crystal pulsed faster, like it could feel her fear. She didn't know if it was helping her or feeding on her then. She saw it, a low building half buried in the sand. Its roof sagged, and its walls were patched with metal sheets. Smoke curled from a small chimney. The smell of cooking drifted toward her. She stopped at the doorway, breathing hard. A voice called from inside. "Well now, what's this blown in with the wind?" A man stepped out, tall and lean, with gray in his beard and a smile that seemed too easy. He wore desert leathers and carried no visible weapon. His eyes, however, were sharp. They missed nothing. "You look like trouble," he said. "Or maybe trouble's chasing you." She hesitated. "I need a place to rest, just for a while." The man stepped aside. "Come in, girl. The desert's no place for someone running alone." Inside was dim but warm. The walls were lined with shelves of tools, old maps, and scavenged machine parts. The smell of stew filled the air. The man ladled some into a dented metal bowl and slid it across the table toward her. "You've got that look," he said, sitting across from her. "The one people get when they've been running for days." She didn't answer, too busy swallowing the hot stew. It had been so long since she'd tasted real food. Then she heard a sound, soft footsteps outside. Her head snapped toward the door. The tall man smiled faintly. "Easy, it's just an old friend." The door opened, and the man from the Wasteland stepped inside. Relief surged through her chest. "You made it," she said, standing. But his eyes were not on her. They were locked on the tall man. "Silas," he said flatly. "I should have guessed." The tall man spread his arms in mock welcome. "Always the same, aren't you? Walk into my home and start accusing me." "You work for him," the Wasteland man said. "You always have." The woman froze. "Him? You mean the scorcher?" Silas' smile didn't fade. "Work for him? No. Deal with him?" "Sometimes," he said casually. "Business is business in the desert." The Wasteland man stepped forward. "If you're smart, you'll let us walk out now." Silas leaned back in his chair. Can't do that. See, he wants what she's carrying. And I told him I'd deliver it. The woman's blood went cold. You brought me here to hand me over, she whispered. Silas shrugged. Not personal, girl. But you've got something in your arms that doesn't belong to you. None of them do. Those crystals. They're older than any of us, older than this desert. The Wasteland man's voice was sharp. They're not his either. Silas tilted his head. You think you're protecting her? You think you know what those things really are? He leaned forward, his eyes on the woman. They're not just power stones. They're pieces of something bigger, something alive. And you, he pointed at her, are changing because of it. Her stomach tightened. What do you mean, changing? Silas smiled again. You've felt it. Your body's faster, stronger. You can see farther, hear more. That's not the crystal giving you energy. That's it rewriting you. She took a step back, her mind spinning. Rewriting me for what? Silas' answer was quiet. For whatever made them in the first place. The Wasteland man moved between them. I've heard enough, he said. But Silas only leaned back and tapped his fingers on the table. Too late, Silas said. Outside, the faint sound of hooves on sand grew louder. The whistle. The scorchers. Mark drifted in through the open door. The Wasteland man's jaw clenched. You called him here. Silas grinned. I told you. Business is business. The woman's hands tightened on the crystal. Its glow seeped through the cloth again. Red veins curling like smoke inside it. She didn't know if she wanted to throw it at Silas or run with it. Outside, the hooves stopped. The doorframe filled with shadow, and the scorcher stepped inside, the heat of his presence making the air shimmer. Give it to me. His voice was deep, muffled by the skull mask, or I burn everything you've touched. The Wasteland man raised his weapon. The woman's heart pounded, and the crystal pulsed so hard it felt like it might break in her hands. The air inside Silas' shack was heavy. The scorcher stood in the doorway, the desert light burning around him. His skull mask glowed faintly red, the heat rolling off him in waves. The Wasteland man kept his weapon up. Back away, he growled, but the scorcher didn't move. Instead, he raised his staff. At the tip was a crystal, larger than the woman's, deep crimson, pulsing like a living heart. When it glowed, she felt her own crystal answer. The cloth around it grew hot, the red veins inside twisting faster. Do you feel it? The scorcher's voice was deep, almost calm. They call to each other. They are pieces of the same mind. The woman shook her head. They're not alive. Yes, the scorcher interrupted. They are. And when they are together, they are stronger. With them, we will remake the world. Silas stepped aside, hands up. I brought her, like I promised. Payment first. The scorcher didn't even look at him. Instead, his staff flared with light, and the boards under their feet began to smoke. The Wasteland man shouted, "Run!" The woman bolted through the back door, the crystal clutched tight. Outside, the desert stretched open, flat and deadly. She heard hoofbeats behind her, riders in black armor circling fast. A gunshot cracked, one rider fell. The Wasteland man ran beside her, firing again and again, but there were too many. The scorcher's voice carried over the wind. You can't outrun me. You carry my other half. The crystal in her hands was burning cold now. Her breath came fast. Her vision sharpened. She could see each grain of sand, each glint of sunlight off an enemy's blade, and for the first time she didn't feel afraid. She stopped running. The Wasteland man grabbed her arm. What are you doing? I don't know, she said, but it wants to fight. She unwrapped the crystal. Its glow burst into the open air like a flare. The riders reined back their beasts, shielding their eyes. The scorcher dismounted and began walking toward her. His crystal and hers pulsed in perfect rhythm. The air between them seemed to hum. She could feel heat pouring off him, and in return, cold radiating from her crystal. When they stepped closer, the ground cracked. The sand turned to glass in Long, jagged lines. The Wasteland man shouted, "Stop! It's feeding on you!" But she couldn't hear him. The hum had grown into a roar inside her head. Her skin prickled. Her heartbeat matched the crystal's pulse. She raised it high, and the desert exploded. A wave of freezing air shot out in every direction. The riders were thrown from their mounts, weapons scattering where the wave touched the sand. Frost bloomed where it touched men, their armor iced over. Their movements slowed until they collapsed. The Scorcher's staff flared red, his crystal sending out its own wave of heat. The two forces slammed into each other. The air between them shimmered. The ground buckled. "You're strong," the Scorcher said. "Stronger than I thought. Together we could burn the rot from this world." The woman gritted her teeth. "Not with you." She pushed harder. The cold surged forward, shattering the glass under their feet. The Scorcher's heat pushed back. For a moment, the world around them was nothing but red and blue light, swirling like two storms colliding. Then she felt it. The crystal wasn't just taking her strength. It was giving her something else. Her thoughts were faster, her limbs lighter. She could feel every movement of the Scorcher, every weakness, every opening. She lunged forward, but before she could strike, pain ripped through her chest. The Wasteland man had grabbed her shoulders and yanked her back. Her vision blurred. The light from the crystal dimmed. "You were disappearing," he said urgently. "It was pulling you in." She blinked, her knees weak. The Scorcher stood across from them, breathing hard, his mask tilted slightly. "You can't fight it forever," he said. "It's in you now. Every moment you hold it, you become more mine." Before she could reply, a second whistle cut the air. From the east, another group of riders appeared, scavengers, drawn by the battle. The Scorcher's head turned toward them. When he looked back, his voice was low. "This isn't over." He raised his staff. A wave of heat swept over the frost, melting it to steam, and in the haze, he was gone. The woman sank to her knees, the crystal dim in her hands. The Wasteland man crouched beside her. "You can't use it like that again," he said. "Not unless you want to lose yourself." She looked at him, her voice shaking. "If it's inside me now, maybe I already have." Far behind them, the steam curled upward into the sky, and somewhere out there, the Scorcher was already planning his next move. The desert sky was black with storm clouds, the first she had ever seen. The woman stood at the edge of the city of bones, the crystal glowing faintly in her hand. The Wasteland man was beside her, his weapon ready. The wind carried the sound of hooves and the faint, rising whistle of the Scorcher's mark. "They'll be here soon," the man said. She nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the massive sphere at the city's heart. The hum inside it was louder now, almost a voice. It pulled at her mind like a tide. "We have to end this," she said, "and we have to do it before he gets here." They moved through the bone towers, past skulls half buried in the sand. Every step closer to the sphere made the crystal in her hand grow heavier. Its light deepened to an icy blue threaded with bright red. She could feel its hunger, not just for water, not for her, but for connection. When they reached the plaza, the sphere was awake. Its surface rippled like water, flashes of light moving under it. The hum had become a deep, steady heartbeat. She realized with a chill. It was the same rhythm as hers. The Wasteland man's voice was tense. "If you touch it, I don't know if I can pull you back." Before she could answer, the air grew hotter. The Scorcher stepped out from between the bone arches. His black armor shimmered, the crystal at the tip of his staff burning like a fragment of the sun. "You brought it home for me," he said. "Good. Together, we'll finish what it began." She took a step back. "I'm not finishing anything with you." The Scorcher tilted his head. "You think you've been carrying a weapon? This is not a weapon. It's a seed. A seed left here by something older than our kind. When it grows, the wasteland will be gone, replaced with what they built before us. And what is that?" she demanded, his voice lowered. "Perfection. No hunger, no thirst, no weakness. But no choice either. It will make us what it wants. The Wasteland. Man spat. That's not life. That's a cage. The Scorcher raised his staff. Life in a cage is better than dying in dust. The crystals pulsed in unison, hers and his. The ground shook, cracks racing through the plaza. From the bone towers, pale skeletal creatures poured out, drawn to the light. Some fell to their knees before the Scorcher, others before her. It was as if the city itself was choosing sides. The Wasteland man fired into the swarm. She lifted her crystal. Cold shot from it, freezing the ground. The Scorcher countered with a wave of heat. Turning the frost to steam, they stepped toward each other. The light from their crystals flared so bright, it washed the color from the world. When they clashed, it wasn't with weapons. It was with the raw force inside the stones. The shockwave shattered bone towers, sent skeletal creatures flying. She could feel the crystal pushing into her thoughts. Let go, it whispered without words. Let me finish this. For a heartbeat, she saw it. A vision of the wasteland turned green. Rivers flowing, skies blue again. People walking streets of stone. Under tall towers. No one hungry, no one dying. It was beautiful. But in that beauty, every face was the same, eyes glowing faintly, voices calm and empty. No laughter, no fear, no will. Her breath caught. She realized the truth. The crystals didn't just feed, they replaced. The Scorcher pressed forward. See it. He shouted. See the world they offer us. All you have to do is let it grow. She met his gaze through the mask. And watch us stop being human? Her voice hardened. No. With all her strength, she turned the crystal downward and slammed it into the ground. The sphere roared, the hum rising into a scream. The light from both crystals erupted in a blinding wave. The Scorcher staggered back, shouting in rage. Skeletal creatures crumbled into dust, the bone towers shaking apart. The Wasteland man grabbed her as the plaza split, pulling her away from the collapsing sphere. She saw the Scorcher vanish into the falling bones, swallowed by fire and dust. When the light faded, the city was gone. Only a hollow crater remained. From the dark clouds above, the first drops of rain began to fall. Cold, clean, real, she tilted. Her head back, letting it touch her face. The Wasteland man stood beside her. Silent, the crystal was gone. Only a small shard of dull gray stone remained in her hand. It was cold, dead. She dropped it into the wet sand. The rain kept falling. The desert would change, but she knew the crystals weren't gone forever. Somewhere out there, in the dust and ruins, others were still waiting to be found, and someone, maybe someone like the Scorcher, would come looking. She took one last look at the horizon, then started walking. The wasteland was no longer silent. It was waking up. Asterisk.